Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. You're here with Helen Tarrant, and today I'm going to talk to you about fit out and renovations. What's the difference? So one thing is that a fit out is what your tenant does on the property they're entering, so your property. A renovation is what you do to the property as you are fitting it out or making it better for your tenant to inhabit or to move into. Now, the fundamental difference is one, that your tenant's paying for. The other is structural work that you are actually paying for, but to increase the value of the property. So here, I want to share with you this property which just recently got under contract, and it's a property that I'm using. I'm actually doing it myself because I want to use it as a case study to teach others how to do it, because I'm very big about only teaching others those things that I have done myself, and I would never put anybody into a property that I'm not sure about the strategy. And being a buyer's agent and a specialist in commercial property education, I would never put anyone into a property that I don't know the strategy or can't give them a strategy behind the actual property deal. So as such, we're here to build relationships and long-term relationships and work out a strategy. So for a strategy for something that is vacant and uplift, you've got to know what part of it the tenant is going to do. So what you'll see here is that we'll show you some photos of what the tenant's already there. It used to be an old NAB bank in there, so they've got the original fit out already in there. Now with a bank, we've got to check for vaults, we got to check for any particular type of data, all of those things that needs to be gutted. So the property will need to be gutted, so totally removed, and then we're going to do a renovation. We're going to divide the property into two, create two actually separate entrances, and then fit it out for a tenant. So new aircon, new everything in there. So there's going to be, we're going to scrap the old fit out as well, but I want you to see what a fit out is. And then what goes on top of it is what we're planning to do is gyprock walls. We're going to move the ATM across, and then we're going to be putting new partitions and as well as new air conditioning. So that's really the difference between that. But of course, just to also explain to you a little bit about what happens during the process and why you would particularly do a fit out for a tenant, or you choose to just do a reno and keep it bare shell. It's all about your tenant incentives. Now, what is a tenant incentive? A tenant incentive is something you give to a tenant to attract them to actually stay or potentially sign a longer lease, or actually for them to choose your property over someone else's. And typically, I would not, in a renovation, do a fit out in the property until I have secured my tenant. So, for example, for this property in Gordon Street, I'm going to do basically a fit out and a renovation on it. Probably about, the renovation is probably going to be somewhere around $40,000 to $50,000, and the fit out could be an additional $10,000 to $15,000 on top of that. But I'm not actually going to do the fit out until I have a tenant come in. So with that, I can then negotiate with a tenant what kind of fit out they want. So they might want partition walls, they might want a particular way of layout, they might want a particular type of flooring, and they may also want air conditioning position in different rooms, splits in different rooms, and they might want a more of a glass panel or partitioning compared to anything else. So what I am going to do as part of the reno, which is the fit out and the structural costs of the actual shell of the property, so not to do with the tenant, so this is the renovation bit. I am going to split the property into two, make two doorways, and I am going to create power points along the way. Obviously, put ceiling or drop ceilings on top, the suspended ceilings. We're going to put lights through it, and we are going to create individual toilets and plumbing into the property as well, or shared, depending on how we split up the premise. And of course, we're going to look at parking access and all of those things to do with that. And then once I've created that, that's where I'm going to leave the property as is, vacant, warm shell. So this is what they call warm shell. So when you do a reno in commercial, there is a bare shell, which is your concrete, bare shell. So what concrete bare shell is, basically like your warehouse, which is just concrete floors, concrete walls, bare shell, nothing else in there at all. You might have a toilet in there, maybe a little kitchenette, but nothing else. That's your bare shell. Then you have what they call a warm shell. Now, a warm shell is where you have actually done some floor coverings or made allowances for floor coverings. You have painted the walls, and you have created a ceiling or suspended ceiling and proper lighting along the way. Now, that is what they call warm shell. And of course, in there's allowances for where the aircon would go as well. And of course, some plumbing if the the property itself doesn't have individual toilets or spaces. So that's what exactly is a warm shell. Then of course you've got a full fit out where often to incentivize the tenant. So for example, if a medical tenant came through and they wanted that premise that was used to be the NAB premise, medical center, turned into a medical premise, then they would be potentially offering a higher level of rent and maybe a longer lease of, let's say, 7 or 10 years. And then because of that, then I would do a full medical fit out for them. So that's fully fitted out might then cost me more because I have to do specialist flooring. I have to make sure basins are in each room, plumbed through, make sure there's aircon in each room, as well as making sure there's proper, reception area. There's proper waiting areas, doctor's rooms. We have the file room that needs to sit at a certain place, and also, staff rooms, as well as the right amount of parking and access way as well. So there's actually, ways of doing a fit out, but most of the time you work with your tenant regarding putting the fit out together. So whether that is a bare shell, where you just presenting the tenant as a bare shell, and often that is for an owner-occupier, the way that they would do it. Then the owner-occupier goes in and renovates or fitted out the property themselves. If you get a warm shell, that's where we normally would get an old premise, and you would gut the old premise, so you take out everything in it and you create a warm shell where you can start showing tenants in, potential tenants, to show them what the property is like. Because you can't show an old premise like the NAB building to a potential tenant, because they can't imagine in their head what type of property that, whether it's going to suit their needs or not, and whether that can be transformed into anything. You have to actually bring it back to a warm shell where it's inviting and open, and then they get the wow from it. And then from there, you then you go the next step and do the fit out and work out with your tenant what incentives you should give them. If they're doing their own fit out, you might give them some rent free. But if you're doing the fit out for them, you might want to charge a slight premium on the rent, so that you can actually you can then actually reap the benefits of spending the money up front for the fit out. You get it back over a time period as well. And of course, there's depreciation benefits if you did end up doing the fit out as well. So there's a lot of things to think about when you're presenting a vacant property and when you're looking at fit out. But just remember, fit out is usually responsibility of your tenant, whereas a renovation and structural changes to the property is actually your responsibility as a landlord and the vendor as well for the future when you sell the property. And of course, that is anything when you're looking at renovation. Could be an extension, be parking, creating sheds, could be partitioning, splitting, cosmetic as well as structural. But when you're looking at fit out, we're talking internals, compliance, we're talking about flooring, we're talking about air conditioning, we're talking about plumbing, electricals, and we're talking about whether you do if you have a brand name tenant at A grade fit out where everything is SMIC, or whether you have a B class or a C class fit out where it's functional because it suits the tenant that is going to pay a low amount of rent, or whether you get a middle of the road where you can get a professional tenant but it suits the area as well. So everything is negotiable when you come to something like on this. But the important thing is to remember, don't overcapitalize on any property in commercial. Don't go in there and do a full fit out before you actually attract the tenant. Always wait for the tenant, negotiate with them, and then work out what the next step is. So firstly, get the property, make assessment of what is the potential for it, go and do the refurbishment or the renovation on it, bring it to a warm shell or a bare shell depending on what kind of tenant you are going to attract. So for example, warehouses, you want to bring it to more of a bare shell, but office space, retail, you want to bring it to a more warm shell. And then the next step, attract the tenant, work out with them who pays for what, put in the fit out in negotiations in conjunction with them, and then sit back, reap the rewards, the depreciations on your property. So right now, if that's the strategy you're looking to do, just like the one I'm about to do, then come and join me. Come and be part of the community, learn as much as you can about the uplift, or simply reach out to me at helentarrant.com because you want a strategy session and you don't actually know how you are going to be able to move forward in your portfolio, because we're here to help to create wealth. We're not in just finding your property, but it's all about wealth creation. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell, because I'm here and to share and do more knowledge and videos for you. So leave me a comment if there's something particular you want to ask or a particular topic you want me to talk about. So until next time, happy hunting, and I look forward to speaking with you. Bye for now.